Today's podcast is sponsored by Security Unlocked, a new podcast from Microsoft focusing on artificial intelligence and machine learning and security. Check out the links down in the description. Paul, they do one podcast. One podcast.
Yeah.
We
What happened?
they do
We're superfluous. Is that what we just found out?
Yeah, that we don't matter. We could.
Yeah, I've said that for a long time. I had a weird event yesterday, like not last night, but the night before. The night before the wives did the podcast, I woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning and was up for 2 hours. I came down the stairs and worked like an idiot, but I was completely out of my mind all day. So the reason I couldn't be here earlier, Bragg pinged me, was because I was literally asleep. So I think I was nervous about my wife being on the podcast.
Yeah. The critics say it was the best podcast ever. I'm fine letting them do that every week.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what, sweetie? You just go down here. You do it every day. Call me when you need me.
It's like a blog. Anyone can start one.
Yeah.
Anyone. You can write your first blog post.
Yeah, but then do it 1,000 times.
Yeah, still doing it 4 years later. We'll see.
It's I think the most offensive comment out of all of them.
Most offensive. I assume it was about toilet paper.
No, it was actually that people were happy our wives didn't talk about the weather, which hit in the heart.
They benefited from the weather change.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if we had both been sitting here we still are actually.
It was like, where are we sitting?
I mean, we're looking at good weather going forward. So
yeah. So back to AccuWeather Daily.
I didn't see the weather comment, but I am concerned about the toilet paper thing.
Nobody's perfect. We all got.
I did. I mean, I had an instance somewhere in the pandemic, like months ago, where my wife said, and she'd lost most of her contracts early on and has been kind of scrambling to make it up. And then toward the end of last year or whatever, she finally started getting some stuff back. And she's like, look, I'm really busy. I'm going to have to work tonight. She makes dinner like every night, dude, right? She's like, could you do the dishes? And I was like, obviously. What do you, and then I was like, I will do the dishes every single night. Like, that should be my thing. We've been married for 30 years. That's how much of a saint my wife is. Right? She's been doing all this stuff.
Yeah. So in our household, we flip on dinner. It kind of depends. Like, usually if it's on the grill and needs to be ruined, like, I'll go do that.
Sure.
She's much better at baking, mostly because I can't keep tablespoons and teaspoons separated.
Interesting.
Whatever.
My wife's is an excellent cook. Like, she always cooks.
But after dinner, usually, like, my job in the house is I empty the dishwasher. My wife does not like me loading the dishwasher for the same reason she doesn't like me putting things into the laundry. Like,
Would you like your wife to file the stories that you finish on your computer somewhere, or do you want to do that yourself? We're particular about things. That's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so we have a split or whatever, and then she comes and does the podcast and says, like, your job's so easy. I'm like, yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your job is easy. It's like the Bill Burr thing, right? If you can do your job in your pajamas, it's not a hard job. I mean,
I think the pandemic really broadened the horizons of who can do their job in the pajamas, though. Well,
for sure.
I will say that is.
Hey, look, got to do what you got to do. But
yeah, that's.
Anyway, I thought the thing we did that they did yesterday was nice. I thought it was good.
Yeah. Well,
didn't feel like it diminished my my role or my accomplishments, such as they are.
It's gonna get real awkward when my wife comes home from work today. She's like, I think I'm gonna write a book about Microsoft. I'm like, you're gonna do what?
Right. Okay.
Fortunately, not too much has been happening, I guess, in the world of tech. Microsoft has a new, if you bought the Surface Pro 7 Plus and you need to replace that very specific drive, you can now do that.
Well, but you have to be a business.
Right. I mean,
and the thing you're buying is a refurbished unit, which is interesting. How do they already have these things? They also said that this, it's kind of a weird little cartridgey looking thing. It's an SSD, obviously, but I don't know if it probably is specific to Surface, but it looks like the same thing they have in Surface Pro X and in Surface Go 2, maybe. But they specifically said, "Oh, you can't mix and match." It's like, I bet you can. I bet you can.
There's I hope they didn't do something dumb and make it like a firmware specific thing, so it's just their specific software that's doing this and not the actual hardware. But
yeah, I think what happened is because this product is sold specifically to business, maybe they felt like they had to do this to put it over the top for customers who are like, we can't do this unless there's a clear,
yeah,
to recovering machines if they fail,
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. It just, I mean, really hits home the point that if that is the case, that the Pro X just is at selling in business, because
it can't be.
Yeah, I don't.
It can't be. I mean, I'm sure everyone looks at that the same way. They see it and they're like, oh my God, that's amazing. And what is it? Oh, yeah. I don't know. I think it's the same.
What was that, like the Pontiac Fiero or whatever that was? The it looked like a Ferrari from more than like 30 feet away, and then you got up close and you're like, oh yeah, that's the.
I kind of like those cars.
I'm not saying they're bad cars. I mean, it's the same thing as the Surface Pro X, right? Like you look at it, you're like, oh, that's really good, and then you
go, and then it's like, oh,
it's not a Ferrari.
It's a lot of things in life like that. They seem appealing right up front, and then the more you learn, it's like, oh, it starts chipping it away at the value.
Kind of like our wives did with this podcast.
It ruined.
Oh man, what else is going up? Sony announced. Well, so this is an interesting one to me for a reason. So Sony announced that they're building a next gen Sony PlayStation VR headset thing. They didn't really say too much else about it, but here's the interesting aspect to it, at least in my mind. The attachment rate for the first generation PlayStation Vue headset was reportedly like very low. Like I might be wrong, like 5%.
It's probably less. So because we know they revealed sales at one point, and then we know how many PS4s were sold. So I mean, I feel like they only sold a couple of million of PSVRs or whatever they were called. I'd have to go look that up, but I bet it's under 5%.
Yeah. So to announce a second one, I guess they're trying to drum up support for developers, maybe potentially.
So yesterday, you pinged me and said, "Hey, Sony's doing." You actually, the way I'd have to go look at it. You wrote something suggested there were two things happening, or multiple things happening with Sony, and I was already writing the VR story, and I was like, "Oh, I'm already on." But it kind of hung in my head for like the rest of the day. I was like, I almost asked you a couple times, "Was there another thing?" And there is another thing, right? So I ended up writing that up separately later in the day. And the other thing is, Sony this year is going to bring a ton of PS games. Now, I don't know if they're PS5 games or PS4 games or some combination. I suspect it's some combination to the PC. So I actually think that these two things together represent a look at Sony's strategy, because I think they realize they need differentiators. Now, Microsoft has bought a bunch of studios. Microsoft is expanding Xbox to all these platforms. Sony has always been very much platform exclusive. And not just platform exclusive like PlayStation, but model exclusive. Like these are PS4 exclusives. These are PS5 exclusives. Microsoft is like, yeah, we're probably going to put this on Xbox One, PC, and Xbox Series X and S. That kind of thing. And I think we're starting to see the first steps toward an expanded video game strategy from Sony, and that it's a weird thing to say because they're trailing so badly, but in response in part to what Microsoft's doing.
Sure, it's free money. I mean, if you can port it.
Yeah. And the PS thing, I'm sorry to interrupt, the VR thing is just a differentiator, or at least it is for now. Or maybe they know something we don't.
Yeah. Well, if you want to learn something new that you may not, you should check out that new podcast from my friends over at Microsoft, Nick and Natalia. They have a new one called Security Unlocked, where they take a closer look at the latest innovations in threat intelligence, security research, and data science, with a special focus on demystifying artificial intelligence. They have an episode 13 talking about drop accounts and CEO frauds and how easy it is for someone to potentially snipe your credentials. Check out the links down in the description below. Bum, bum, bum.
Made it out like an 80s song.
Yeah. My wife was going to make fun of me about how I read those yesterday, but she got a little, I don't want to say flustered, because she figured out the control board over here, which is really easy. Really easy to my brain, but when somebody else sits down, you got to like teach them in 5 minutes, and
it's easy to your brain, but sometimes you sit down and the buttons do different things. So,
this is very true.
It's voodoo, really.
Yeah, thankfully no Windows updates ran. And well, actually, my biggest concern was that something was going to happen to the recording because.
Sure, of course, they do this great show, and then it ends, and you're like, oh, sorry about that. That would have been amazing.
Yeah.
I would have just left the house. I would have been like, all right, I'm going to go grab some coffee and some donuts or something, and I'll be back.
Good luck with round 2. You can experience the full world of our lives. So, anyways.
Well, yeah, good news, everyone. Stephanie, my wife, has agreed to do this once every 1,000 episodes. So,
yeah, what we should do is start a little bucket. Like, enough dollars get into the bucket, the ladies will sit down. Like,
right.
My wife's like, if I'm doing your job, am I getting paid for it? It's like, well.
Oh, welcome to our company. No.
Yeah.
That's not how that works.
So, anyways, it was by far our most popular episode, most commented on episode. And, yeah. So.
Well, I appreciate that it was mostly very respectful.
Yeah. Minus the weather guy. It's gonna be
That's
warm.
the weather thing. Yeah.
55 freedom units.
I feel like we obsess over the weather every winter. We don't do it as any kind of a plan. It's just
no, but I mean, when you get snowpocalypse, you got to deal with snowpocalypse. So
yeah, it has been a crazy winter.
It has been almost as crazy as this podcast. That's it for today, folks. Today's podcast was brought to you by Security Unlocked. You can find links down in the description below, or go to securityunlockedpodcast.com.